Benny Hill, born Alfred Hill in Southampton, England, on January 21, 1925, became one of the most famous comedy stars the world had ever seen. From a very young age, Benny had a love for making people laugh. At just 6 years old, he was performing songs for people at the beach and getting paid for it. He was always known as the class clown. After leaving school as a teenager, Benny took a regular job as a milkman. Deep inside, he dreamed of something bigger. He decided to move to London to chase that dream. There, he got a job backstage. In a theater, one night a drunk actor couldn't go on stage. Benny stepped in and saved the show. At one moment would launch his lifelong career in comedy. After this lucky break, Benny worked hard to make people laugh. In 1942, during World War II, he was called to serve in the British Army. He was trained as a mechanic and worked in Normandy, France. Later, he joined the military's entertainment group, performing for soldiers. This is where he realized he wanted to be a comedian. He changed his name to Benny as a tribute to the American comic Jack Benny. After the war, in 1947, Benny had his first radio performance. And by 1950, he was appearing on television. His quick humor, funny faces, and silly stories made him a hit. By the 1960s, Benny Hill was becoming a well-known name in homes all across Britain. Then came the Benny Hill Showtha project that would make him truly legendary. It started on the BBC in 1955. Benny's style was unique. He used fast-moving comedy, silly music, and lots of slapstick humor. His sketches often included people running around in fast motion while music played. Sometimes the jokes were a little cheeky, with women in short outfits and Benny making silly romantic gestures. People found it funny, not offensive at least. At the time, the 1970s, the show moved to Thames Television and reached new heights. In 1971 alone, over 21 million people watched the show in the UK. That's almost half the country's population. People around the world tuned in. The show even became very popular in the United States. By the 1980s, Benny Hill had become a global star. Benny's comedy was supported by great music and a unique cast. The show's famous ending music, Yakety Sax, was fast, fun, and unforgettable. Benny often played many roles in his skits. He'd dress up as a policeman, a woman, or even a famous celebrity. His makeup and costumes were over the top, but that's what made it funny. He mocked pop culture, famous people, and even political figures. He made fun of everyone, including himself. Other big names like Michael Caine, Johnny Carson, Adam Carolla, and even Snoop Dogg praised his talent. Benny Hill made people laugh across generations. But as time went on, something started to shift. Comedy tastes began to change. The jokes that once made people laugh now made some people uncomfortable. In the late 1980s, more and more people were speaking out against content that seemed outdated or offensive. One of the biggest problems critics had with The Benny Hill Show was how it portrayed women. Many skits featured women in bikinis or short dresses running around while Benny or other men chased them. Some viewers said it made women look like objects instead of real people. Even though Benny said his show was harmless fun and that the men were always the ones who looked silly, the criticism kept growing. Then came a sketch that crossed the line for many. In that scene, Benny was dressed in drag, acting like a nurse, being chased by women dressed as schoolgirls and secretaries. It was meant to be a joke. But to some, it looked like a scene stuck in the past. Too silly, too cheeky, and too out of touch with modern views on gender and respect. The media, advertisers, and even some fans were quick to react. The humor that once felt funny now felt old. And worse, it made TV companies nervous. Complaints were coming in and ratings were dropping. Executives at Thames Television had a big decision to make. At the time, the show was also becoming too expensive to produce. It cost over $500,000 per episode, a huge amount for a comedy show. In 1989, after more than 30 years on the air, Thames Television canceled The Benny Hill Show. There wasn't a clear announcement blaming just one sketch, but insiders say that scene mixed with the rising complaints and high costs was the final straw. Comedy giant had been taken off the air. After the show ended, Benny Hill kept to himself. Even though he was a millionaire, he lived a very simple life. He never bought a house and rented the same small London apartment for over years. He didn't own a car, even though he had a driver's license. He preferred walking and buying food from discount grocery stores. He even glued his shoes back together instead of buying new ones. Fame never changed him. He stayed private and humble, spending most of his time writing and reworking scripts, hoping to make a comeback. But it never happened. Benny Hill never got married and had no children. There were rumors about his love life, but he always said he just couldn't find the right person. Some women admitted turning down his proposals. In one interview, Benny compared dating to working in a chocolate factory, too many choices made. It's hard to pick just one. He once said he would have been happiest with a woman who had a simple job like a shop assistant or office worker. Some believed he was lonely, but Benny never complained. He loved comedy and spent his life trying to make people laugh. Despite the spotlight, he was a shy man who preferred quiet walks and handwritten jokes to Hollywood parties. Even after Cancellation, Benny's influence remained. 80 Sax became one of the most recognized pieces of music on TV. In 2015, it was voted the #1 television theme song in the UK. His shows continued to air in reruns across the world. Some people still argue that canceling his show was a mistake, saying it was a product of its time and shouldn't be judged by modern standards. Others believe the show's end was a sign that comedy needed to evolve, no matter which side you're on. One thing is clear. Benny Hill made a mark on television that few others ever could. Benny Hill. He passed away on April 20th, 1992. At the age of 68, he died alone in his rented flat, just days after suffering a heart attack. Despite his fame and fortune, his final days were quiet and simple, just like the life he chose to live. When news of his death broke, tributes poured in from around the world. Fans remembered him not only for his outrageous comedy, but for the way he could make people laugh without saying a single word. His facial expressions, timing, and physical humor were his tools, and he used them better than almost anyone. Looking back, it's easy to see how the Benny Hill Show reflected its time. In the 60s and 70s, it was fresh, bold, and wildly funny. But by the late 80s, the world had changed. What was once funny now seemed inappropriate to some. The scene that helped end the show was just the surface of a deeper shift in culture. People wanted new stories, different voices, and more respectful humor. Benny didn't fight it. He quietly stepped back, leaving behind decades of work that still makes people laugh today. In the end, Benny Hill wasn't just a comedian. He was a master of timing, a pioneer of sketch comedy, a man who built a worldwide audience without social media, streaming, or viral videos. His show may have ended, but his legacy remains. Generations continue to discover his work online, and even modern comedians admit he influenced their style. Whether you believe he was unfairly canceled or simply belonged to another era, Benny Hill will always be remembered as a true original. Benny Hill, born Alfred Hill, was one of the most famous British comedians in television history. He became popular across the world with his hit show, The Benny Hill Show, which combined music, slapstick comedy, and cheeky sketches. People loved his funny characters and fast motion, chases with silly music playing in the background. But it was more to Benny Hill than just laughter. His life was filled with sadness, rejection, and loneliness. From a young age, Benny was shy, especially around women. He often shared childhood stories about small moments that hurt him deeply, like when a girl wouldn't share her candy floss at a fair or seashells on a beach. These moments may sound small, but to Benny, they stayed with him forever, he said. They were part of the reason he never got married or had long relationships. He admitted to following those girls home as a child, but claimed he never spoke to them. Whether this was innocent or a bit odd, it showed how emotionally sensitive he was. Even though he passed an important school exam at age 10, Benny didn't enjoy school and had very few friends. He soon left school and took on many small jobs. He worked as a clerk, a delivery man, and even unloaded trucks for Woolworths. During this time, he secretly liked a girl named Jean, who worked at the perfume counter. But once again, he was rejected. These early rejections stayed with Benny for the rest of his life. While working for Dorset Dairies, he imagined himself as a cowboy driving a milk wagon. This funny idea later became one of his biggest hits, Ernie, the fastest milkman in the West. The song was so successful that it won an Ivor Novello Award in 1972. Benny had always wanted to make people laugh, and he started performing comedy in local shows. He told jokes for 5 shillings a night and believed that if he became a clown, people would love him. However, his parents didn't believe in his dreams. His mother once told him, "Get a real job, Alfie. One with a pension. Could be a postman." But Benny didn't listen. He moved to London, where life was tough. He stayed in Retton, fested, shelters, and worked as a stage manager. He painted stage backdrops and cleaned up after animals. Sometimes he had to fill in for other performers who were too drunk to go on stage. Benny also appeared in old acts that used blackface makeup, something that was common back then but is considered offensive today. He performed in a world full of people who didn't fit into regular society's lackers, drinkers, and dreamers. Like him, during World War II, Benny was drafted into the army and served from 1942 to 1947. He hated his time in the army, especially being part of the anti-aircraft searchlight unit. After the war, Benny used the money he received from the military to survive while trying to make it as a comedian. He performed in small clubs, seaside towns, and even at formal Masonic dinners. He worked hard to be noticed. Sometimes he walked to gigs in the rain and painted his gums red so his teeth would look whiter under the lights. His big break came when he started appearing on television. As Benny Hill's popularity grew, so did his influence in the world of comedy. The Benny Hill Show became a massive hit in the UK and around the world, airing in more than 100 countries. His comedy was full of silly jokes, over-the-top characters, and music. He often played several characters in one episode, including women. One of his funniest characters was Fred Scuttle, a happy and clumsy man always caught in funny situations. Benny also composed his own music, directed the sketches, edited the footage, and wrote most of the material. He had complete control over the show. His slapstick style, people getting chased, falling down, or getting hit on the head, became his trademark. People of all ages loved it, and it made him a star. But behind the laughter, Benny Hill was still lonely. He never married and avoided close relationships. His last known serious relationship was with a woman named Doris Deal, a chorus girl he met at the Windmill Theater. They dated in 1954, but the relationship ended when she asked him to marry her, and he said no. After that, he never had another deep relationship. Benny once said that being in love felt like pain in his chest. It was so strong, it made him feel miserable. Despite being famous and wealthy, he was afraid of spending money. He wore old clothes until they were worn out and even glued his shoes back together when they broke. Many people who worked with him said he was kind, but quiet and never truly happy. Still, he loved performing and kept working into his later years. Even when his health started to fail, in the late 1980s, Benny's health got worse. He had heart problems and suffered a mild heart attack in February 1992. Doctors told him he needed bypass surgery, but he refused. Just 2 months later, Benny Hill passed away alone in his flat on April 20th, 1992. He was 68 years old. His body was found days later after he stopped answering phone calls. The cause of death was coronary thrombosis. There were even rumors that he was buried with gold, which led grave robbers to dig up his grave, but they found nothing. His death was sad and quiet, especially for someone who had once made the whole world laugh. By that time, The Benny Hill Show had already been canceled. It had aired its last episode in 1989. But why did such a successful show get taken off the air? The answer lies in one final sketch, in a world that was rapidly changing. During the 1980s, television audiences and public opinions were shifting. People were becoming more aware of how women were treated in media. Benny Hill's sketches often included young women in short skirts being chased by silly men. Some thought it was harmless fun, but others saw it as sexist and offensive. A particular sketch, where a nurse in lingerie is chased around a hospital by male characters, caused a strong backlash. Viewers complained. Critics called it outdated and insulting. Advertisers began to pull their support from the show. Hill defended his comedy, saying that he always made the men look like fools, not the women. But it wasn't enough. Cultural values had changed. People no longer found those kinds of jokes funny. The network, Thames Television, had to make a decision. With rising costs, fewer viewers, and growing criticism, they canceled the show. Benny Hill was heartbroken. He didn't get a chance to update the show or respond to the critics. His perfectionism and unwillingness to adapt had sealed the show's fate, even though The Benny Hill Show was taken off the air. Benny's impact on comedy still lives on. His style influenced many other comedians and sketch shows. His comedy was simple, visual, and easy to understand in any language, which is why it became popular in so many countries. In 1991, his final television special, Benny Hill's World Tour, New York, aired in America. It showed him interacting with people on the streets, performing funny songs, and doing what he did best, making people laugh. Sadly, it was the last time he would appear on international TV, but even after his death, his legacy continues. In 1998, Channel 4 included him in its Heroes series to honor his contribution to British comedy. In 2002, writer DJ Taylor ranked him as the third greatest British comedian of the 20th century. A 2006 documentary titled Is Benny Hill Still Funny? Compared his work to newer shows like Little Britain and The Catherine Tate Show, showing that even decades later, his humor still sparked debate in 2021. The UK channel That's TV brought back The Benny Hill Show during the Christmas season. They aired over 40 hours of his content, introducing a new generation to his classic comedy. Even today, his sketches are watched on YouTube and broadcast on TV in different parts of the world. Benny's brand of humor, funny faces, silly walks, and exaggerated situations still makes people laugh. While the world may have changed and humor has evolved, his work continues to entertain. Some say his jokes are too old-fashioned or not politically correct anymore. But others believe his heart was in the right place, that he just wanted to bring joy to people. So, what about the title of the scene that took the Benny Hill Show off the air for good? While there wasn't a single scene that ended the show, the sketch with the nurse being chased in a hospital was the final straw. It came at a time when society was rethinking how comedy should treat people, especially women. That sketch, paired with Benny's old-school style and refusal to change, led the network to say goodbye to a show that had once ruled the airwaves. It's a bittersweet story. Benny Hill made millions of people laugh but left the world quietly and alone. He was a man who gave so much joy but struggled to find it in his own life. Still, through his music, his sketches, and his unforgettable characters, Benny Hill remains a legend. Whether you find his humor hilarious or outdated, one thing is certain: his influence on comedy will never be forgotten. Benny Hill's story is one of laughter on the outside and quiet pain on the inside. He made the world laugh for decades, but in his personal life he faced sadness, loneliness, and rejection. As a child, he was shaped by small moments that stayed with him forever. As a man, he turned those feelings into characters, songs, and skits that brought joy to millions. He lived for his work, giving everything to make his audience smile. From playing saxophone to performing comedy, from painting his gums red to walking in the rain for a show, Benny gave his whole heart to his craft. But time doesn't stand still, and neither does society. What made people laugh in the 1960s and 70s didn't sit the same in the 1980s. While Benny believed his jokes were harmless fun, others began to see them as disrespectful or outdated. The scene that finally triggered the backlash, where a nurse in lingerie was chased in a hospital, wasn't new for Benny's show. But by that time, the world had changed. Viewers weren't laughing anymore. They were uncomfortable. And once the advertisers walked away, the network followed. It's just like that. The Benny Hill Show was gone, and so was Benny, not long after. Without a partner, without children, and without the show that had defined his life. His death was quiet, and in many ways, so was his exit from television. But silence doesn't mean forgotten. Benny Hill is still remembered. His face, his characters, his music, they live on in reruns, online clips, and in the hearts of those who grew up watching him. His humor might not fit today's standards, but it shaped generations of comedians and still has a place in the history of entertainment. What can we learn from Benny Hill's story? Maybe it's that fame doesn't always bring happiness. Maybe it's that comedy must grow with its time. Or maybe it's that behind every joke, there's a person with hopes, fears, dreams, and regrets. Benny Hill was more than a funny man in a fast-forward chase scene. He was a complex artist who worked hard, felt deeply, and wanted to be loved by the world. In the end, he was. Even if the Benny Hill Show ended with controversy, Benny's legacy didn't he broke barriers in television? He brought British humor to the world. He made people laugh when they needed it most. And that's a legacy worth remembering. As long as people are still smiling at his jokes, Benny Hill will never truly be gone.